Ho, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and you that have no money, come, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which does not satisfy? Listen carefully to me, and eat what is good, and delight yourselves in rich food. Incline your ear and come to me. Listen, so that you may live. I will make you an everlasting covenant, my steadfast, sure love for David. See, I made him a witness to the peoples, a leader and commander for the peoples. See, you shall call nations that you do not know, and nations that do not know you shall run to you, because of the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, for he has glorified you. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Good morning. It's very good to be here with you today. My husband and my sisters and I had the opportunity to worship with you on a Sunday morning a couple weeks ago, and I thought that that was the first time I had been here for Sunday morning worship, but I learned this week that it turns out I had been here a few times as a little girl with my Aunt Jeannie Chadwick Bridgewater, and she sends her greetings, her and Bruce send their greetings today as well. There is something that I need to tell you about myself and my family today, a struggle that we have to endure. Maybe there are some of you here that suffer this affliction as well. It's a condition known as displaced fan syndrome, and it occurs when a person lives in a city different from where their favorite sports team is. Sufferers of this condition have been known to do desperate things in order to watch their favorite teams on television. Recent advances in technology have lessened the suffering of those living with displaced fan syndrome, but the struggle is real. For example, my husband Justin and I, in order to watch our favorite baseball team, the world champion Chicago Cubs, must use the MLB TV package. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot better than missing the games or having to follow along just with the score and not seeing the highlights. But this package basically only has a couple of commercials that it shows throughout the entire season. So this means we have to endure the same commercial on repeat over and over and over again throughout each game throughout the season. So for that reason, we've seen the Sonic commercials more times than we care to admit, and can quote the back and forth between the two Sonic guys, which is, of course, a less commonly known side effect of displaced fan syndrome. And the commercial on repeat over and over again since the All-Star break has been the pretzel bun commercial. The commercial starts with one of the guys saying, "You know, if they would just sell these tasty pretzel dogs at the stadium, it would really class up the joint. Get your tasty hot dog on a premium pretzel bun with melted cheese and crispy bacon here." And his partner asks, "What kind of cheese, you say?" "Melted cheese sauce here." "Any toppings on that one?" "Just crispy bacon here." Have any of you seen it? Kind of funny, the first 10 times. After that, the mute button becomes your best friend. It is this tone and tenor, that of a hot dog vendor, that many commentators have attributed to God in the first passage, or the first verse of our passage today. Maybe sounds something like, "Hey-o, you thirsty? Get your clean, refreshing water here. No money, no problem. Get your food here. Milk, wine, we got it all here." And according to these biblical scholars, you could add hot dog vendor as another image of God revealed to us in our scriptures. Isaiah chapter 55 is the last chapter in a grouping within the book of Isaiah that is commonly referred to as 2nd Isaiah, Deutero-Isaiah, or the Book of Consolation. Isaiah chapters 40 through 55 were composed during the time that the Israelite community was living in exile after the takeover of the Babylonians. And these chapters in Isaiah are composed with intensity and passion, meant to provide comfort, reassurance, and consolation to a community living in exile. In the midst of the suffering of the people, the writer seeks to convey hope. And in this last chapter of this group, the voice of God is characterized by what biblical scholar Stephanie Mitchum has called a vibrant invitation, a sales pitch to a lavish spread for those living in exile. For this community who had been separated from their home and their land, hungry and desolate, unsure of their future, the voice of God enters in this way. Hey-o, you thirsty? Get your refreshing water here. No money, no problem. Get your food here. Milk, wine, we've got it all here. In this closing chapter of 2nd Isaiah, this book of consolation, we see God, the provider, the comforter, the ever hopeful. And then this question in verse 2 comes from God to the people. Why spend your money for that which is not bread, your wages for what fails to satisfy? Hear now this same passage interpreted through the Message translation. Why do you spend your money on junk food, your hard-earned cash on cotton candy? Listen to me and listen well. Eat only the best. Fill yourself with only the finest. Pay attention. Come close. Listen carefully to my life-giving, life-nourishing words. For I am making an everlasting covenant commitment with you, the same that I made with David. Solid, sure, enduring love. These chapters of consolation end with this exuberant and lavish invitation from God, and then this thoughtful invitation and reminder that God offers something more. A covenant relationship with God is that which ultimately satisfies. And for a community who felt fearful and abandoned in their time of exile, these words of hope offer not only nourishment for the body, but nourishment for the soul. This covenant with God means to live in right relationship with God and with one's neighbors. And it is that which answers the question of what truly satisfies. But I wonder how these words sounded to those exiled due to political oppression. For these words are not just spiritual in nature, but also quite political and economic. Again, biblical scholar Stephanie Mitchum writes of this passage. The prophetic writer upends the prevailing economic system by inviting reflection on what is valuable. Why would you spend your money for that which is not bread? And again, why spend your labor for that which does not satisfy? In this context, she continues, labor and money have great value, but bread is not all that satisfies. By asking what will truly satisfy you, the author poses a difficult question for marginalized people to answer. Their answer might come in pragmatic terms of food and money, but the truest satisfaction, she writes, comes from something more. The prophetic voice in Isaiah comforts, even as it calls for deeper reflection on human valuation beyond such things as social class, wealth, and education. So perhaps we might even see this question of what truly satisfies and the answer that follows, being in a covenant relationship with God, as also an invitation to work toward and see the hope in an end of political and economic relationships which marginalize and oppress, and instead a call to live in right relationship with God and one another. See, churches are often really good at verse 1 of this chapter, embodying God as the hot dog vendor, giving out food, hosting potlucks, youth groups with free pizza, children's events with lots of candy, collecting canned goods for the food pantry. And this giving food to others in need is necessary in a world where so many have so little while others have so much. A group of community organizers that I've worked with calls these actions projects of survival. They are a necessary part of caring for those who do not have enough. But perhaps what that question in verse 2 calls into question is if those projects of survival are actually necessary. In the state of the world in which the Israelite community was living at that time, it was an absolutely necessary project of survival. In the state of the world in which we are living, it is an absolutely necessary project of survival. But perhaps that which truly satisfies is that covenantal relationship that God is calling us to, in which we live in right relationship with God and in right relationship with one another in such a way that marginalization and oppression ends, so that there is no more need for these kinds of projects of survival. Perhaps that which truly satisfies is an end to war, poverty, and injustice, which creates the disparities and suffering of others. For this too is salvation, the saving of the world. The best part of that Sonic commercial is at the end, not just because it's close to the end, but also at the end. The most exuberant of the pair continues to try to convince the other guy to get a hot dog. The second of the pair says, "Wait a second, so I can get a tasty hot dog on a premium pretzel bun with melted cheese and crispy bacon?" And the first guy excitedly and expectantly says, "Yes." And the second guy says, "Oh, no thanks, I already got mine." And this is so often how we respond to this question from God about what truly satisfies. God's invitation for us and our neighbors, just as it was for the Israelite community in exile, is not just for a lavish spread to curb hunger, but it is for an end to the hunger. It is for a covenant relationship with God that calls us to right relationship with God, our neighbors, and all creation. And all too often, our response is, "No thanks, I already got mine." And yet God is relentless. Like that commercial that plays over and over and over again, God offers to the world over and over and over again that which truly satisfies. The everlasting covenant, the steadfast and true love of God, and the invitation to share that love with all of creation. Each day we are given the opportunity to respond anew, not with, "No thanks, I already got mine," but with an embrace of God's offering for that which satisfies the body, mind, and spirit of all creation. And today especially, as we approach the table of communion, as we are asked to renew our covenant relationship with God and our neighbors, we are invited again to partake of the bread of life and the cup of the covenant, to renew our passion to live in right relationship with God, with one another, and with all creation, to embrace all that God offers for the salvation of the world. For that alone is what truly satisfies. May it be so. Amen.